So continuing with the conceptual design phase, what I want to do is look at a second option for modeling basics, which is I want to show how you create like an overall form for a building. If you want, you can think of this as drawing the building from the outside in. So on the application menu here, I'm going to say create me a new family. It's a mass family, and what I'm going to do now is save it, and I'm going to put it in the folder, and I'm going to call it under buildings. I'm going to overwrite the one called existing buildings, so I'm just going to start with the empty file here. What I want to do first of all is draw a footprint of the building that will be 120 feet wide and 50 feet deep. So I pick on the rectangle, I make sure I'm drawing on level 1, and I make sure that this is switched off, make surface from closed loops. I actually want the sketch, and I can use my reference planes to eyeball this in, and then when it's in approximately, I'm going to double click on the edge and change that exactly to the size of the existing building, 100 feet by 50 feet. Okay, now the building, this part of it, the form that makes up this part of it, is 120 feet tall. So I click on the sketch, I go to create form, a solid form, and I see the temporary dimension. I can click in there and change that to say that height I actually want to be 120 feet. This extrusion is something that I can edit, because if I pick on the top surface here, I can go, so let me just pick on the top surface, I can go and say edit the profile. This is me going inside the form itself, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the edge and draw in an arc, and I'll make that arc with a radius of 120 feet. So I'm going to place it, make sure I've got the closed surface that I require, double click on it and change that so it says 120 feet. So at this stage, if I finish the editing, what I've got in 3D is something that looks like that. This is the form for my building. On the top of the building here, I've got a 15-foot high restaurant or viewing gallery. So if I click on the surface here, I can actually use the sketch that's already existing and simply go to the option that says create form. It extrudes it up, but I want to change the dimension from the default, which is showing here, of about 40 feet, and make that the 15 feet that I want. So now what I have, if I turn it, is it the building moves out, and then there's a 15-foot height on the top surface itself. On the roof of the building itself, I have another form which I'm going to show as a revolved form. So what I can do is just tell it where I want to draft. I'm going to say set and pick the top surface. The revolved form itself is on this corner, and it's 15 feet deep and 50 feet in width here. So if I double click on here, I can change that to 50, and if I double click on the front edge here, I can change that to the 15 feet. Now if I were to pick that as it stands at the moment, then when I create form, it doesn't Vasari doesn't understand that I want to revolve it. It just needs the extra line work. So if I put a line, I'm just going to place it here somewhere, and I'm drawing from the back to the front. I pick the closed line work and the line that kind of indicates what I want to revolve around, really like an axis. Then I say create a form. And if I pick the form itself, what I did is it automatically revolves 360. And I'm imagining that it revolves just 70 degrees from where it was. So it's got a sloped face. Maybe these are solar collectors or the curtain wall in this part of the the restaurant area. On my roof, I want to project and a shape and sweep it around the outside of the roof itself. I'm going to make a 6 foot by 6 foot shape with a 5 foot arc in it. So what I want to do, first of all, I'm going to place a point on that edge. Let me tab until I find the, I'll just make sure it's on the edge of the top surface. Then I'm going to select that so that it's active. Now what I find a technique that's useful is sometimes when you've got multiple faces and you hover over them, it wants to change the orientation of the face that you're drafting on. So I find it sometimes easier to make the face of the point active and then draw the sketch that I want. You see, if I go close here, I might not get the result that I want, in terms of which plane it comes in on. But if I make it active, so it's the plane that I want, and then I draw this out in space, so I could go and pick that and make it 6 feet by 6 feet. I'm almost there, there we go, 6 feet by 6 feet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and move it, modify, move, and pick it up at that corner and move it back to that location on the point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my arc in that I want here. So I'm going to pick the fillet arc and select those two edges. I make it smaller than I want, and then I click and make sure I change this to the right size, 5 feet. Now what I've got is the option of saying that I want to select the edge of the surface, and I want to hold the control key and select the form that I want to sweep around it, and then go and say create me a form that's a solid form. Now I've swept that around the building, so we look good. In the outside form of the building, there's a 25-foot cutaway in this corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the rectangle command. Make sure always that you know where you're drafting. So I want to go all the way back to the level 1. And what I'll do is I'll use the midpoint on this edge and extend it beyond the outside of the front face. It was 25 by 25 feet, so if I click that, I can change this to 25. And if I click, well, I don't need to do anything else. That was how far back I wanted to go for the cutout. So now if I pick the shape itself, I can say create form, but this time I'm going to say create a void form. And what I want to do is I want to make that so that it's 60 feet high. So I can see the form. And actually, if you kind of tab on it, I tab until I selected the form, I can see the height. I'm going to change that to 65 feet. And now that's what I've got from my building. So I've got the outside form of the building. There might be one last thing to do here, is that at the moment, because these are each drawn as separate forms, it assumes that these are each going to be different zones within the building. And what I want to do, if I'm thinking this is really all just one outside form, then I might want to go and pick the option that says join geometry. And starting with the main mass, I'm going to say I want the join to the top shape there. Join again the sweep, and join again the revolve that was on the top. So that's now all part of the one piece of geometry.